Hello everyone and welcome back to the last segment of the day here on the GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast, and this is a little stardom sit-em segment to get you prepared for Monday Night Football. If you have a couple last minute players that you want to add to your team, this is the time to do it, and these are the guys who I think will have an impact on their respective games in both the Jags Bills and Commanders Bengals. Without further ado, let's start off with a guy in the Jags Bills game who a lot of people might be surprised I'm mentioning here, because this guy, at the start of the season, no one really knew who the wide receiver one would be for Buffalo, but this guy has really stepped up out of the slot on the outside, wherever you want him aligned, to really be a fascinating presence for this Bills team. And if they decide to throw the football early and often in this game, this is going to be the guy to do it. So I'm going to say start Khalil Shakir tonight. Now, I know that a lot of you might be skeptical about this pick, but the fact of the matter is Khalil Shakir is playing like and looking like the wide receiver one here in Buffalo. And a couple of stats to support this claim that I'm making here, because I don't want to sound too silly. 25% first read target share he's receiving. That's a huge percentage of the targets that he's getting as the first read in this offense. So Josh Allen, when he is throwing the football, when he is stepping back to the pocket, not, rolling out, throwing screens, not looking to, make big plays. When he is dropping back, at the first read, he's looking to Khalil Shakir 25% of the time. That's the fourth highest team total in fantasy points as well, Khalil Shakir. Now, of course, it's behind, guys like Cook and Kincaid, who we know and expect to perform in this offense. But Khalil Shakir, in that wide receiver core, really could step up into a bigger role should, opposing defenses wish to hone in on stopping the run here. Because I think James Cook will be effective for many games, but there will come a time where he's going to have to be forced to throw the football a little bit more, Josh Allen. And Khalil Shakir, from the small sample size we've seen of him playing in that slot role, is someone who I think can step in effectively. And so I'm not necessarily making a case to start him often, but I am making the case that in certain games, much like this matchup tonight, he could be of value. And I know I've talked about all the other weapons that Josh Allen has at his disposal, but I think Khalil Shakir could be the biggest X factor, not just in tonight's game, but throughout the entirety of the season. So start Khalil Shakir tonight, and I promise, and I promise, that it will pay dividends. The guy who should sit tonight, this one seems pretty obvious right now, because this guy lost a lot of kind of hype in this offense, especially now that he's kind of carrying the weight of the load, with Jahan Dotson now in Philly. Terry McLaurin really is kind of one of those wide receiver ones where, he doesn't necessarily play like a wide receiver one. He has his moments, but he's not necessarily someone who you can point to and say he can take over a game at any given time. And against the Bengals tonight, I really think his slow start to the season will continue. Only 8 catches to start the season for 39 yards for Terry McLaurin. And I just think that the Washington wide receiver room right now leaves a lot to be desired in terms of helping, Jaden Daniels and, Terry McLaurin in creating a relationship, because when you have one guy who you expect to be your wide receiver one and just a bunch of role-playing depth kind of guys, you're not going to have an effective passing game in terms of creating leverage for your number one wide receiver. I don't necessarily like Zaccheaus as a wide receiver too. There's a lot of hope around De'Ami Brown, kind of as a vertical threat to stretch the field, but that's gone as well. And you don't have, like Jahan Dotson. He's a very good route runner in that regard. So there's a lot of questions surrounding this Washington wide receiver room with not a lot of answers. And I don't think that they'll find many answers tonight against Cincinnati, who, even though the strength of their defense is essentially their front seven, I think that against a rookie quarterback, you're not going to face too many, deep shots in this game. And watch for Washington to play a lot of catch-up in this game. Terry McLaurin, for tonight is not a good play in terms of fantasy, and it kind of is maddening because I really had high hopes for him. But right now, it just feels very bleak for him in that Washington wide receiver room. Guy who should start, we talked about a little bit during the show, and Andre might disagree with me in this regard if he's still in the comment section. Jamar Chase. I think that this is the perfect game for Jamar Chase to really go off because against Washington, it's an interconference game. There's not much importance to it. You are 0-2, but you just played the Chiefs very tough. Should have won that game if you want my opinion. Now you're going up against a team where you feel like you can put your foot on the gas offensively and just win comfortably, get back on track in the season. I don't think, the contract situation with Jamar is going to hold a lot of weight anymore because the Bengals now know what they are. And what they are is a team who can contend with the best in the AFC. And their schedule, it's going to get tougher down the stretch. But for now, when the game is in front of you, they have a couple big games, where they can get easy wins against Commanders, against the Panthers, where you expect them to win. So, Jamar Chase, he's going to leave all the tension of what happened in the offseason behind, and the Bengals are going to start thinking internally about what this team can be, because externally, yes, it was a mess. But right now, they're in an advantageous position to get 2 easy wins and go into the meat of their schedule, looking to be one of the beasts of the AFC. And Jamar Chase is going to be a huge part of that, especially, if T. Higgins is still, kind of coming back from injury and also from a crazy kind of contract situation. So Jamar Chase is going to be of importance. I could have put Yoshivas here because he's kind of a cult hero in my mind and your minds, I guess, as well. But Jamar Chase is simply the guy who's going to be the X factor going forward for Cincinnati. And the last player that I want to talk about is Christian Kirk. I've had a lot of qualms with Christian Kirk because the potential he really does have in this offense for, this Jaguar squad. But let me be clear about the Jags. This is a team, right, where you have a quarterback in Trevor Lawrence who you're wanting to improve. You invested a lot of money into. But around him, the infrastructure is not set up for him to succeed when you have a lot of guys in your wide receiver room predicated on speed and getting vertical. And you just lost perhaps your best route runner in your entire team, and Evan Engram, your tight end, to an injury as well. You don't know when he's coming back. So the reason why I'm so low on any Jacksonville wide receiver for fantasy purposes is because they don't offer anything to Trevor Lawrence by just, trying to use their speed to get past corners. A lot of what the Jaguars' deficiencies are in high intelligence route running, getting and scheming people open. And that's what's going to happen. Yes, you can also point to the deficiencies in the running game. Travis Etienne hasn't really looked himself to start the year. But this is a team, as Shep Easy Sweet Spot said, Jefferson played his entire rookie contract, and look what he got. So Jamar, stay healthy, and maybe you top your LSU bud by more than a penny. Well, I think that, the whole situation there in Cincy was kind of complicated by the T. Higgins situation as well. But Jamar Chase is going to get his money. I think that this whole situation has to be in the past for Cincinnati in order for them to prepare for meet of their schedule. Like I said, they have 2 easy games coming up, and Jamar shouldn't necessarily worried about it. He's going to get paid, and I think he's going to get paid around, if not the same range as Justin Jefferson, maybe a little bit more. So I don't know why it had to be this way, because he had 2 years left on his contract and not just one. So, the whole situation was a little bit of a mess there. But right now, I feel like Jamar is ready to get past this current moment and prepare for the stretch run of this season. But back to the kind of bigger mess here in Jacksonville, because I think of Christian Kirk, I think of a guy who can utilize his speed to good effect. He's a decent route runner, but the problem is when you don't have diversity in your receivers' route trees, the offense stagnates. Because Brian Thomas Jr., yes, he's a wonderful deep threat, love his verticality, and coming out of LSU, that was probably the biggest thing that we're looking at in terms of getting Trevor Lawrence a deep weapon, because Trevor Lawrence's deep ball is one of the more underrated ones in the league, according to stats. But any Jacksonville wide receiver right now should be feeling pretty hard done by because of the fact that they just don't fit together in the scheme. So Christian Kirk, and to top it all off, he only has a combined 4.9 points in his first 2 games. That should tell you everything. So make of this what you will, but I'm not holding my breath in terms of the excitability of this Jacksonville wide receiver room. It's kind of disappointing because they seem to really entrust a guy like Brian Thomas Jr. to help them, but it's not the case. But let me know what you think in the comments. But that will just about do it for the show. Thank you all for tuning in yet again. This has been the GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast, brought to you as always by the GSMC Sports Network. I've been Christopher Shepard. Thank you all for tuning in. Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to the show and the network. Also, keep on making yourselves available to the Super Chat, Super Thanks, and Super Stickers features here on YouTube to continue to contribute and interact with the show. Any questions, comments, or concerns are always accepted. Love your interaction thus far. We will be right back tomorrow at the same time as always, 3:30 p.m. Eastern, with another fantastic show. But because of that, we'll be right back tomorrow. Thank you all for tuning in.